You know, there is this saying. You never know what you have until you lose it. This saying has been stuck in my head for the past few weeks. I've been playing some PSO2 Classic, trying to retrace some steps I did on JP servers that I've never done on global servers. But playing the game again reminded me of how much worse the loot in New Genesis is. In today's episode of PSOpinion, I'd like to discuss that. Let's lay down the groundwork first. In PSO2 Classic, the process of attaching desired augments onto your gear was much more convoluted than it is in New Genesis. Items can drop with random augments attached to them, and if you want to move them to a desired item, it takes a little bit of work and mental gymnastics. You can't simply just pull out one augment from a weapon or unit and move it to the next. You have to use fodders to create better fodders, and once you have assembled the perfect fodder items, you can start attaching them to the item you want. It is a convoluted system that has many mechanics under the hood, which the game simply doesn't teach you about. But the system was actually kind of genius because it allowed every piece of loot to be worth something, depending on the augments attached to it. A 1-star unit could still be your most valuable drop in a quest, simply because it dropped with a desired augment with a high slot amount. In New Genesis, all of the value is pushed onto the augment capsule, and it makes weapons and units worthless. Because of this, the auto-sell feature had to be implemented, which basically removes most of the loot from the game, and makes the loot tables feel hollow. And the best part about PSO2 Affixing was that offensive augments offered so little power that the system wasn't mandatory. Only hardcore players would frown on you for not affixing your gear, but that's just a loud minority of players. The fact that PSO2 augmenting offered very little power also helped with paid augments. Grand precision was best in slot, but it really wasn't that important to have. Meanwhile in NGS, if you don't have ADI augments on all 4 of your items, you're missing out a lot of overall damage. This is because all damage increasing augments are multiplicative in New Genesis. So, the more damage augments you have, the more they snowball out of control. This punishes players for using non-offensive augments like Dreadkeeper, which are popular among the casual crowd. This ironically creates a way bigger divide in DPS between casuals and hardcore players. In PSO2, most of the power came from the weapon of choice, and getting some of the top weapons wasn't that difficult. The key difference between a casual and hardcore player was in skill. Now it's skill and the depth of your purse. I get it though, PSO2's affixing system was more complicated than it had to be, and many people don't miss the system at all. I personally believe simply making the system more easier to understand would have been better than getting rid of it entirely. But I don't think going back to it now is possible anymore. So let's work with what we have. How can we improve the loot? Well, first of all, the easiest way would be to improve the preset skills system. It's been 2 years and it's still the same 3 different fixa skills that drop at an abysmally low rate, to the point where if you turn auto sell on, you might forget that enemies even have weapons and units in their loot tables at all. Making preset skills more common, being able to level them up, being able to transfer them across weapon series, as well as add new skills for more variety, would go a long way in making this system feel more like a proper weapon customization system. A few preset skills I can pull out of thin air would restore a lot of the flair older Phantasy Star games had. These would be stronger than fixa attack, but come at a cost of only buffing power against one enemy race. You could also have elemental fixa that boosts damage against enemies weak to certain elements. For example, Fixa Light or Fixa Doll's Hunter would go hand in hand with Mio's Justitian series. Adding more preset skills does sound like RNG hell, so the system would need to be more flexible. Being able to level them up at a heavy material cost, or transfer them across weapon series would be necessary additions to the system. This would immediately make all those prim swords, with preset skills on them, way more valuable. A different solution to the problem could be something akin to how Phantasy Star Nova handled it. In that game, instead of farming for gear, you were farming for materials that you then used in order to craft weapons, units, and augments. A change like this would make the auto-sell feature obsolete and material storage more mandatory, so SEGA would probably feel more forced to include it in the premium set or as a free feature. But this isn't necessarily why I love the way Phantasy Star Nova handled loot. In Phantasy Star Nova, augments were visual add-ons which you attach onto your weapon and could move them around and change their angle. If you gave a weapon an elemental core, it even changed its photon color. It was truly incredible. It actually felt like you're building a unique weapon. The biggest strength of PSO2 was always being able to express yourself through your character. Also, the combat is pretty great. So why not go a step further and allow us to express ourselves through our weapons as well? I would also love to see a return of S-grade augments. Damage multipliers that have conditions, or change how certain aspects of your class behave, go a long way in terms of weapon customizability. All of the augments in NGS are unconditional, and for the lack of a better word, sterile. Even weapon elements were relegated to a gimmick only a few weapon series interact with. Because of that, they never provide a big enough advantage to justify making multiple elemental weapons to deal with different enemies. Like, do you really want me to invest in a weapon that has a light element attached to it, and performs only marginally better against a handful of enemies than the identical elementless version? Elemental weapons are honestly very underwhelming in general. In PSO2, weapon elements were just another weapon customization mechanic. Matching elemental weakness boosted your weapon stats, causing a roughly 3 to 5% damage increase. It differed from enemy to enemy, some even punished you for using the wrong element due to their resistances, but in ultra-hard difficulty it was normalized to roughly 3%. In NGS that damage boost is still in place. Matching the elemental weakness amplifies the damage by 15%, and mismatching only gives a 10% boost. The problem is that, the weapon attack stat is lowered to compensate for this boost, and because of that, elemental weapons often don't perform better than their elementless counterparts. Honestly, that wasn't a good trade. It just made elemental weapons feel really bad outside of extreme min-maxing situations, like clearing a purple trigger by yourself. Elemental weapons give you access to elemental downs, even on non-technique classes. That's why they're useful in those min-max cases, but the system overall feels like a downgrade to me. We're basically at SEGA's mercy to get new elemental weapons, and if you're a wand lover like me, you'll notice that after 2 years, there is still not a single wind element wand in the game. What's up with that? A loot overhaul has been my biggest wish for the version 2 update, but I won't be terribly disappointed if it won't happen. I just think this kind of rebranding is the perfect opportunity to pull something like this off. I guess we will have to tune in to the NGS headline on Tuesday to see if there are any plans for that. I really hope the devs acknowledge these issues and have something planned to address them. Maybe that's why they're so secretive about the contents of the version 2 update, and why the Renaisa weapon series is being replaced by a new one. Or maybe I'm just overdosing on hopium. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the matter. Am I overthinking it, or am I onto something? I really think NGS would have been a better game if the loot was more interesting again. Anyway, I hope you'll have a fantastic day and I'll see you in the next one. Take care!